Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, June the 17th. Today is the 102nd anniversary of the birth of Lumpur Chah. So everybody can see and hear me okay? Let's see. Yeah. Happy birthday, Ajahn Chah. So I think most of the gatherings in Thailand will have wrapped up by now, but they've been having a special program at Amaravati today. And Ajahn Amaro gave a talk in the morning time there, which was kind of 3 a.m. for us here. So, but there is an evening talk that he's giving that's coming up, and I put a link in the chat there for people that are interested. And let's see if this works. If you head to this webpage on Amaravati's website, Lumpur Chah Anniversary Webcast, there's links to the talk that's coming up this evening, which is at 20:30 London time. So, and I believe they have a daylight savings time, so you have to account for that. And I think it's something like 12:30 our time. So in about 4.5 hours, if people want to catch a talk on that. I'm not aware of other monasteries in the West that are broadcasting any talks to mark the event, but yeah, and Ajahn Chah, we owe so much to him. He's one of these rare figures. I think of him as almost Buddha-like. Not in the sense that he had all the barmi and the perfections of the Lord Buddha, but one of the aspects of a Buddha, a Sammasambuddha, is that somebody has the motivation, the faith, and one might even say the temperament to discover this path to overturning suffering completely. And I'm not sure, well, I'm relatively sure that most humans don't intuit or have faith that the experience of suffering is something that can be overcome. I think many people are of a philosophy of quiet resignation. Their attempts at dealing with dukkha are just an acceptance that life is a mixture of joys and sorrows, and that it is to be endured. And of course, there's a whole panorama of other philosophies, and oftentimes the focus is, or the response to the phenomena of dukkha is looking towards other lifetimes. And this is even true in the Theravadan world. Many people are other focused. They're kind of quietly resigned to just accepting their karma and accepting their lot and accepting the sufferings of a human life that are also typical. And they just hope for a better tomorrow. And Ajahn Chah had the blessing to be born in a time, though, when the Buddhist teaching was still alive and accessible in the world. And born in a region of Thailand that's known to be quite faithful and devout Buddhist. And as a young person, he had the good fortune even to visit a, a a forest monk. I believe it's Ajahn. There's a story in his biography where when he was a young boy, I believe as Ajahn came through his area and was staying in a forest nearby his monastery or nearby his home village, and his father had gone to pay respects. So that might have made an impression on him that blossomed later in his life. But as the millions of people that have been born, and if we go back over to a couple thousand years, billions, tens of billions of people that have been born in Buddhist cultures and countries, that alone is not merely enough. Where people meet the practice, oftentimes it's other focused, not so focused on this kind of central problem of dukkha. And Ajahn Chah himself was born into a village and a family, and his faith in Buddhism led him to ordain as a novice in his village monastery, which did provide him some benefit and connected him with some sort of study. But it was really, in some sense, his own character, temperament, and faith in Buddha Dhamma that led him not merely to sort of follow the sentiments, the routines, the rituals of the monks practicing in that monastery and in many monasteries. He took it to heart. He took the teachings that he found in the suttas for real, and dedicated himself and dedicated his life in a very concerted way to putting them into practice. So, and I think of him as almost Buddha-like in a couple ways, a couple dimensions. I mean, one is the Buddha had faith that there was something beyond birth and death, and that there was the ability for ourselves to transform and transcend the suffering of old age, birth, and death. And he sought out, fueled by that faith, inspired by the sight of a samana, a spiritual seeker, to discover that. And later he talks about it as rediscovering this ancient path. And that takes quite a unique individual and an amazing quality of faith. The Buddha practices with some of the best teachers, and they declare to him that he's reached the highest or the foremost of their teachings and of the spiritual life. But it doesn't match this original inspiration that he has, that intuits that one can completely go beyond old age, sickness, and death, beyond dukkha. And so he pushes on and he rediscovers the path. And in a similar fashion, Ajahn Chah believed that there was more that could be done rather than some of the more traditional roles that the monks of his time were playing. And he leaves the monastery, sets off, picks up the life of a Tudong monk, travels, in a way that's most difficult and ascetic, to find other teachers and digs into the books, the Vinaya in particular, to kind of inform his own search, fueled by this great faith, that if one takes this teachings seriously and puts them into practice, that great results can be realized. So, and just as the Buddha sort of talked about how the Dhamma always exists, this opportunity always exists, it does become lost and obscured. It's just the nature of time and human societies and institutions. And so the Buddha talked about this Dhamma that ends dukkha as an old path that he rediscovered. Not something he invented, something he rediscovers. And of course, through time, people lose their way. They don't have the good fortune to have good teachers. They don't have the character or temperament or the spiritual perfections to intuit and have faith. And they settle for something less. And so it takes renewal and regeneration. And I oftentimes reflect of how, someone like Ajahn Chah, a single person, fueled by that faith, who dares to practice for the highest aspirations of this teaching, how much benefit that they generate for themselves and others. And with Ajahn Chah, it's amazing. He comes from a very humble, relatively poor area of Thailand. And the fruits of his practice are just amazing. How it has regenerated Buddhist practice for so many people, not just in his region or his country, but also around the world. As often happens, people then deify somebody like that. And that's, on some level, that can be fueled by our own doubts and our own lack of faith of our capacity. And one of the other things I think is quite special about Ajahn Chah is he was very forthright and honest about what a struggle his practice was. I have no doubt that he was a charismatic and gifted person. But still, the results that he developed in his practice did not come easy. There was a great struggle that he undertook, and he put forth tremendous, one might even say heroic effort, developing his practice. So, and then the burden of taking on disciples, training them, setting up monasteries. So today is the day to remember and recollect him, and honor his daring, honor his faith, honor his effort and practice, and how it's benefited sort of us and so many others. When I think of him, I oftentimes think of just how daring it is, this endeavor to overcome dukkha, or even just to set your sights on dedicating your life as he did, or at least dedicating a certain amount of your life's energy to trying to cultivate this path of practice and transform, transcend, overturn, uproot, break the habits of suffering. So that's a little reflection on this day today, June the 17th, anniversary of Ajahn Chah's birth 102 years ago. He was born in 1918, which most people take as the year of the Spanish flu pandemic. Mm-hmm. Other news, just another reminder, Ajahn Sona is giving a talk on Saturday. That'll be online, and I posted something about that yesterday. You could visit Wat Atamyarata's website for details. It'll be a Zoom talk. So, all right, well, let me see. I'm going to scroll down through the chat here. Who's all here this morning? 103. 103 people on Ajahn Chah's 102nd birthday. I learned a little trick yesterday. I was doing some investigation to see if there's some way we can highlight these questions that people have. And in the normal YouTube interface, if you type at and the first couple letters of somebody's name, so if you type at and then PA, and just wait a second, a little pop-up will come up with Pacific Hermitage. And if you click on that, it will kind of fill out at Pacific Hermitage, and then it highlights it in the chat interface. So that's one way you can get my attention. But unfortunately, the streaming software I use, it doesn't have that highlight. I kind of have to swipe over and look at a different screen to sort of see that. So, but I wrote the developers and asked them if they could add that feature. That would help. So, George, good morning. Happy birthday, Lumpur Cha. Which, that's not the one. I thought I saw something from you here, George. Yeah. Ajahn, could you please speak to non-self? Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, but I'm always happy to reflect on not self. And I hope people are happy to listen to it. I feel like I tend to focus in on, focus in on the same aspects over and over. In particular, I'm not so interested in it as a philosophical or metaphysical position. I'm interested in it as a practitioner. That's part of the reason why I sometimes talk about selfing. I turn it into this dynamic quality, not like an assertion about there is no self, a metaphysical aspiration or philosophical assertion. That's what I mean. But there is this phenomena in consciousness of a sense of self. And the Buddha highlights and gives great importance to understanding that aspect of consciousness as it relates to the experience of dukkha, this sense of unsatisfactoriness and the habits, the views, the habits that we have, the emotional habits, the cognitive habits that we have, trying to make sense and orient ourselves in the world and decide how we should be, what we should do, what's worth doing. And not understanding the role and the relationship between this sense of self that arises in consciousness that is conditioned. One is liable to relate to the world and make choices and see and even explain the world and value things that support the experience of suffering that could be done without. So I'm thinking about I suppose for many people, they could live their whole life and never even question this notion of a self. Like there is this feature of the self that where it feels durable and permanent and connected. Like the whole phenomena of identification with this image. Like I see an image of myself on the screen here as I'm talking to you all. And there's a sense that that's the same person that went to sleep last night and woke up this morning. And there's this sense of permanence, and an orientation to past and future and me and mine, that play some sort of critical role in what it is that we value, what it is that we uh, choose, what it is that we do. And there's a lot of dimensions to it. I mean, if we focus in on being and becoming, um, those play very heavily sometimes in our strategies for happiness and well-being. There's this sense that that self that I perceive is unsatisfactory and needs to get something new or get rid of something, and then I'll be happy. Then I'll be contented. Then I'll be satisfied. Uh, and it's misguided. Uh, it nurtures that perspective or that orientation of happiness lies somewhere other than here, in the here and now, and it nurtures that outwards orientation rather than turning inwards to direct experience, to awareness, to the present moment. And by cultivating the path, studying the teaching, one can start to tune into sort of the various ways that self is constellated, identity is formed. When one builds a very durable, clear experience even of the present moment, one sees how the self is a concept, a perception that arises and ceases in the mind. And one can contemplate all the various bases of self, the various ways that we build this kind of fairly solid assumption that there is something that's truly me, mine, myself, um, based on the body, based on various features of the mind. Based on views and opinions. So A few thoughts on self for this morning. Let's see what else is going on. Talk about Ajahn Siripanyo giving a talk on Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Jeet. There's no timestamp, so when I scroll down through the chat, I don't know when people said these things. Ajahn Siripanyo gave a short Dhamma talk yesterday to the Thai lay supporters at Yasothan Hospital. Oh. Is that on online somewhere, Jeed? It'd be nice to see. One of our fellow monks who lives up in Yasothan had an accident recently, so he was going up to visit him. He had a nasty fall working in the monastery and is paralyzed. And they're still not sure how much of his mobility he's going to recover. And so I think Ajahn Siripanya went up to see him. That was probably the occasion for giving that talk in the hospital. Yeah. Yeah. Adawan, who is here in the chat, she actually hosted Ajahn Chah in 1979. June 9th. Wow. I wasn't sure what the date was. June 9th, 1979. I would have been 11 years old and in Vancouver, Washington, and I had no idea that such a being was in the world, let alone in Seattle. So, Good morning, Kid Code. You mentioned a few days ago a quote from Ajahn Chah, something like, if you're not beyond likes and dislikes, you haven't even begun to practice. What should we use to go beyond likes and dislikes? I think preference and liking and disliking never completely ceases. It's a natural aspect of consciousness that certain things we find agreeable and certain things we find disagreeable. But what I think Ajahn Chah's pointing to there is our investment in trying to find happiness. And I always thought it's our wrong-headed, misguided investment in trying to find contentment and happiness, chasing our likes and running away from and trying to banish and avoid the things that we dislike. And he talked similarly about moods and emotion. So, and one really needs to look at and understand what one's relationship to these things are and how that relates to this experience of suffering. So what should we use to go beyond like and dislike? Like one is to see the limitation of getting what one wants and the liability of that playing such a strong part in our feeling of well-being and happiness. So, especially since so much of what is it we like and dislike is are things that are really beyond our control. So, like, I like being healthy and feeling energetic, um, but I don't own this body. I don't control this body. Um, I can be a good steward and do things that promote health and well-being to the best of my understanding. Um, but I can't make myself uh, healthy, and I can't create the body experiences that I like so much. There's limitation there, um, and if I'm over invested in that being a core part of my whole sense of well-being, or if my sense of well-being is limited by that or bound to that, then when I'm not getting what I like or want or expect, I'll suffer. I'll allow that to be a cause for suffering. Um, so one develops a disenchantment with uh, like and dislike, one would say. Like, these things will still arise in the mind. This is pleasing to me. This is displeasing to me. And certain things are pleasing in very habitual or durable ways, and other things are displeasing in very habitual and durable ways. There's some music you don't like, other music you like. There's some foods you like, there's other foods you don't like. Um, and um, Getting or not getting what one wants shouldn't be all that, should not be a foundation for a sense of well-being. So, so one develops a different relationship to preferences, liking and disliking, and one is equanimous. One doesn't get crazy or overly excited um, when they're experiencing something that is pleasing to them, or when they get what they want. And one doesn't become frustrated, angry, sad, dejected when one is forced to experience something that is unwanted and unlikable. So, like and dislike can also be a stand-in for the world, like what we talk about the world and the sense realm. Hmm. Good morning, Nadine. Would you say no self, non-self, not self, or other? I think I say them all. I really like anatta. Like, I really like just to use the Pali word anatta. So I think when I'm speaking, I try to say not self. But I'll say all of those. Um, insubstantiality. Having a hard time staying at this morning. Insubstantiality. Um, that's a good way of putting it, because certainly it seems like part of what the Buddha is trying to get at was these very durable beliefs that different people hold, um, especially like religious beliefs, philosophical beliefs, like, an assertion of view, um, about a substantial self that is kind of ignorant of the nature of consciousness and conditionality. So I'm sure most people have never noticed that self is something that arises and ceases in consciousness. The very concept of who you are is something that arises and ceases in consciousness. So, and many people have never even noticed that. Morning, Ken. Do you do daily alms rounds and white salmon? Yes, we do. That's our practice here at the Pacific Hermitage. We had to stop that because of the pandemic in late March. Hopefully we'll be able to resume it sometime this summer, but it's a bit uncertain at this point now. I don't know of any other the Western monasteries that do it every day. There is a small monastery in Germany, Mutudaya, and they may go every day. They had a practice from fairly early on establishing that monastery of going almost every day or daily. But they also have people living in the monastery that can store and cook food. So something that's unique about our hermitage is we don't have anyone living here that can store or cook food. So we're completely dependent on our daily alms rounds or people coming and offering food at the mealtime on site. So, and to my knowledge, that's quite unique. And even in Thailand, that's quite unique to have that kind of arrangement. And my understanding is that's how the Buddhist monks and nuns lived in the time of the Buddha. So we wanted to try that out. A plug for Tanisaro Bhikkhu. Yeah, I like his concept of the committee of selves. He's always talking about a committee of selves. Yeah, we have more than one self. Well, again, this is why I like selfing. Think of it as a dynamic. Think of it as an activity that one engages in. So, okay, maybe we'll end with this. Linda, good morning, Linda. I find the wording of not self helpful in disidentifying. Yeah, that's good. I have a little notebook somewhere where I've written down a few of these, but there's all these wonderful little passages in the sutta where the Buddha is kind of saying one should reflect in this way, and some of these are kind of wonderful reflections at fueling that process of disidentifying, or kind of breaking the habit of identification. And one of the most common ones is one reflects, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Or what is it? This is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. I am not that. So, and it's speech is a powerful thing. So, just like taking that up as a discursive reflection, relating that to the body, relating that to Vedana or feeling, affect, relating that to perceptions, relating that to sankhara, mental formations, relating that to your emotional experiences. I think most people are fairly attached to and identified with various emotional features of their life. I'm an anxious person, so, and in the grips of anxiety or thinking about anxiety, somehow one feels that this is especially who I am, because that's a fairly maybe habitual or durable feature of your emotional life. I'm an angry person, uh, so it can be very powerful to say, I am not that. Um, that is not who I am. That is emotion that arises and ceases in the mind based on causes and conditions. And it's very powerful to reflect on that, because something of the nature of self um, brings an extra measure of permanence. So, like if I experience anxiety, if I'm identified with it, then it's not just an experience of anxiety, it's confirmation that I am that. I'm an anxious person. I'm somebody who has a problem with anxiety. And there's all these notions of permanence, doubt. Will I ever be free of that? Could I overcome that? Um, maybe it's in my genes. Start searching for other pieces of evidence to confirm or deny this misguided attachment to this kind of feature of my emotional life. Um, that's part of what I mean by selfing. Like, this is the tangle of views connected with the self. And the self concept is very sticky. Um, and so, like, the stickiness of it, the attachment of it, lends this sense of permanence. Uh, and so the experience of anxiety just confirms or solidifies that sort of sense of that's who I am. And the notion of anxiety carries forth into the future. You don't even notice how it arises and ceases, because you're identified with it. You've created it into this kind of more permanent view of who it is and even what you're experiencing. Like if you delve into the experience of many things, they're sort of ever changing and ephemeral. And then that identification also sort of sets you up for a kind of confirmation bias. So one tends not to notice the experience of not getting anxious over things in your life, or that you diminish and dismiss those those experiences as somehow a fluke, a lucky day, and the experience of anxiety as confirmation of who you really are. So just reflecting on that and using words even. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. And practicing in a very lucid and balanced sort of state of mind, going through the aspects and features of mind and body. And it can be particularly good in the grips of afflictive emotions, difficult emotions, negative emotions. I like the point that Joseph Goldstein makes as using the passive voice. There is anxiety, yes. That's also good for suffering. When one notices that there's suffering, whether coarse or refined, just to reflect on it as a noble truth and and reflect on it sort of like there is suffering. This is suffering. I also find that very helpful and skillful way to frame that experience. So, okay, well, I've gone way over time today. So let's wrap this up. There's one last recommendation here. So because the chat kind of disappears, I think it's worth sometimes popping some of these things on the screen. So for the videos that stay up long term, that helps preserve some of this. So Ajahn Tiradamo's Non-Self in Everyday Life on YouTube is worth checking out. Okay, thanks for that, Vivian. I'll take a look at that. All right, well, thank you, friends. And enjoy this day. If you're free at 2030 London time, Ajahn Amaro will be giving a talk on Ajahn Chah. But whether you're free or not, it'd be nice to take a moment today just to recollect his life and teachings and what it is that he has done to kind of nurture and reinvigorate this possibility that the Buddha elucidates of how we can cultivate goodness and go beyond suffering. And may we all have the faith and the daring and courageousness to take up that task. And as Ajahn Chah said, if you want to really thank me, put into practice what it is that I teach. So, and I think that's good encouragement. So be well, and hope to see you all tomorrow morning. So bye for now.